The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to chat with Evan. Evan's going to tell me when and where he's born. He's going to describe what it was like, where he grew up, the schools he went to, and the education that he received. So, Evan, over to you.
Well, Tim, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm excited to share a little bit of my story with you and your audience today. To start with, I'm located currently in Dallas, Texas, here in the United States, and this is actually where I was born. So was born here in Dallas, Texas, and pretty nondescript schooling. I grew up and went to actually the same school from elementary all the way through the graduation of high school. So it was a single school. It was a small private school. So it was a little different type of an atmosphere and environment to grow up in. Very academically rigorous. And this is not to say that I was some stud academic or had the best grades. I was fortunate enough to get in first grade when the test really consisted of colors, shapes, and in the alphabet. And was fortunate enough to just kind of progress through my time and graduate in a very rigorous school. Upon graduation, I went to university at the University of Colorado. And
whoa. You raced through from kindergarten to go to university.
Well, please ask questions, Tim. I'm an open book.
All right, let's break it in half, and it says Cowboys all the way around for a start. So let's just wind it back a bit. Let's have a look at your elementary school. So I mean, you went to the same school all the way through. So I mean, you didn't need to rush through it that quick. How big was the school? I mean, Texas is known for being big, wide open spaces, and everything's bigger than everything else. So, but you went to a small school. How did that work?
I went to a small school, and I grew up in a big city. Dallas is a pretty big city here in the U.S., and just ended up at a smaller school. And so I can't recall. I want to say maybe 400 students total from grades 1 through 12. So primarily in the younger ages, you're going to school with maybe 35 to 40 kids.
Well, in a whole
class,
year.
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh,
in
a class. So you got quite a few in the class then.
Yeah.
And
so
you
in that whole graduating year, you go through with about 35 to 40. And as you progress through the middle school, the junior high, the high school, they add on maybe 5 to 10 students every year. So by the time I graduated high school, I think I was going to school with about 80 or 90 students.
Not all in the same class.
The same year.
Same year.
So the year that in my graduation year.
Yeah. So how many did you actually have in your classes?
Very small classes, probably anywhere from 15 to 25.
Oh, that's good. So because I suppose it was academic that they had the smaller classes so they could concentrate on you as an individual, as opposed to sort of got 50 students in front of you, and if you were struggling, you struggled forever because you never got a look in.
Exactly.
So academically, it was quite good then. And what about sports? I mean, did you have sports there? Or obviously, of some sort. So
we did have.
Sounds
sports.
Like you didn't have enough kids to go and play football.
So if you combine the actual number of high school students that were in the high school grades 9 through 12, we did have enough to field a football team. So in Texas, as you mentioned, there's a lot of huge schools, and Texas is kind of known for its huge high schools. And they compete in different classes depending on their size. Obviously, we were a private school, so we were separate from the big, gigantic public schools. And so, but in our conference, it was very competitive. I personally played football and wrestling in my high school career. I can't, I don't know if it comes through on the video, but, I'm 5'10", maybe 160 pounds soaking wet. So I wasn't necessarily the greatest football player. I wasn't the most intimidating, but absolutely loved the game. And maybe my strength was in the sport of wrestling. But I attribute that a lot to the coach that I had on my high school wrestling team. And he was really a unique individual in the sense of really holding 15 to 18-year-olds to very high standards, instilling a great discipline, a great work ethic in us. And I really attribute a lot of my success as a wrestler to just being in his program and being in there for 4 years. And honestly, early on, getting beat up by the older guys, and then gradually building up skills and becoming a pretty legitimate wrestler by the time I was a senior.
So this is the amateur type wrestling. It's not the WWF.
Correct. Yes.
Showboating stuff.
Absolutely none of that. This is the Olympic style amateur wrestling.
Proper grappling.
Yes, exactly.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So did you win any big prizes at that? Did you have a big trophy cabinet where you had all your trophies up, or?
So the highlight of my wrestling career was probably wrestling for the state title my senior year. Unfortunately, I didn't win that match, but I still had an opportunity to step on the mat and compete for a state championship at my weight class. I was a little unique. As I mentioned, I was not a very big individual. And of course, if you weigh 160 pounds for football, you're probably closer to 140 pounds by the time you're in full swing for wrestling season. Because of the youth of our team, my junior and senior year, I was always wrestling up several weight classes. So I wasn't wrestling at the 140 weight pound class. I wasn't wrestling at 145. I was typically wrestling at the 152, 160 pound weight class. So I was typically giving up a lot of weight to the people that I was wrestling against. But again, having come from a very great program and a tremendous coach, I was able to overcome those weight differences and have some success my senior year. So no huge trophies or anything like that, but I would say wrestling for the state title was a pretty cool experience personally.
Fantastic. So now we can look at maybe moving on to your to graduating. So
I graduated, and as I'm kind of outlining here, I wasn't necessarily a stellar athlete, but was always interested in sports. I went to university at University of Colorado here in the United States, and wasn't involved in football or any sports, just kind of was there as a student. And after my first year at university, it was a very different experience because I'm going to a school with 35,000 kids at the school. And I kind of wanted that after being in a very intimate educational experience my entire life. I wanted more of a huge public university setting. But after my first year, as much fun as I had, I felt like I was missing something.
So what did you actually start to major in? Because this sounds very, very much like that you had a change of heart after your first year. So you started off in physics.
I don't know if it was necessarily a change of heart. It was just kind of, in America, it's very typical, I think, for a lot of people, not for everybody, but for kind of, you go to school and you immediately go to college. And I've done some traveling abroad and meeting people from Australia, from Europe, from, everywhere, all over the world in my travels. And that's not very common for a lot of other people. Like, it's typical to take a year off after you graduate high school, maybe travel in that time, or maybe just not go directly into school, because quite honestly, at 18, you kind of don't really know what you're doing or what you want to do. I feel we don't have to get into the whole dynamics of like the American way of life, but I do feel like that is very much a societal thing for Americans. Ended up going straight into business, and I enjoyed it, but I just felt like I was missing something. I'd been involved in sports my whole life. I was kind of missing the competitive aspect of sports. And I felt like I wanted to gain that back, and I didn't really view myself as a phenomenal athlete. And I was very interested in coaching. So
Hmm.
coaching was kind of the next thing that I was focused on. That second year at university, I started youth sports coaching. So it started with coaching fourth grade, fifth grade basketball, soccer teams, and then eventually led me to coaching fourth grade football, which was kind of like my first opportunity to coach football. And about this time I was really kind of contemplating, as much as I enjoyed being around sports, that maybe coaching was something that I could potentially pursue after I graduated college.
Mm. So you made the switch from say business to
So
sports
there
coaching.
was no switch. I
No,
was
you
on
just
a
carried on
I-
the business.
it was all very intertwined. So my
Mm.
education was around business management.
Hmm.
So looking at a lot of dealing with people, managing people, the organizational dynamics of hiring people and attracting people to your organization. And I always equated that to building a team, building a football team
Mm.
specifically. And so as I was going through my college education, I was also very interested in the parallels between business management and managing a football team and building a football team. And that's
Mm.
where a lot of my passion began for coaching. And I
Yeah.
think also indirectly, or maybe directly, led to the book that I just recently published last month called Finding Intangibles, which is really all about team building
Yeah.
in professional sports and the commonalities that elite performers have.
Okay. So what did you start doing in the second year? That was looking at coaching,
That was,
and was you on a course for that as part of your um
there was not. There was not a course for that. I took a class called Critical Leadership Skills. I was fortunate to have a professor in that class that was a tremendous influence on me, just in terms of not necessarily pushing me to coaching, more challenging me to define what success meant. And
mm,
as I said, I think typically in America, we finish high school and a lot of people go to college. And then, you kind of sleepwalk your way
yeah.
through college. And then it's like, oh, well, now I need to get a job. Okay. Well, now it's like, now I look up 10 years later and okay, now I'm in a job that I may or may not like. I'm making
Mm.
money, but I'm making almost like too much money where I can't really go, pursue what it is I really want to
Mm.
do. And I think I was very aware of that dynamic as I was going through it, and didn't necessarily want that. So I kind of
Mm.
had this idea that maybe coaching was something that I wanted to pursue. And I think as I was progressing through college, going from fourth grade football to high school in my coaching, it
Mm.
became very evident that like, okay, I think I want to give this a go. I'll be the first to tell you, Tim, I had no idea what being a college coach or a professional coach meant. I didn't know what that lifestyle was like. I didn't even know anybody that was a coach. I just felt like this was something I wanted to do, and felt like something that was
Mm.
very authentic and true to my personality and the things that I was passionate about.
Okay, so you're majoring in business management, and you did that. Did you do the whole 4 year course on that? Did you
Yes.
did so 4 years of doing that, and alongside that, you were coaching sort of minor leagues and stuff like that, was
I
it?
wouldn't even call them minor leagues. I'm coaching youth sports. These are,
Kids.
the fourth grade football team. These kids have never played football before, right? Like you're teaching them how to tackle.
All
Um,
right.
and just to show you the humble beginnings, we were 0-6 that year. We didn't win a game. And but in fourth grade football, the most important thing is not winning, Tim. It is
Yeah.
actually the pizza party at the end of the year, and we knocked that one out of the park. So that was actually a success, maybe my most successful
Yeah.
coaching experience. But from that small experience, that led me to coaching high school at the local high school,
Mhm.
and again, like much is life, you are building upon all of these experiences. So even though I had no idea what it meant to be a college coach or what that entailed, I was learning, I was reading a lot, I was kind of looking at the people that I looked up to in coaching and trying to emulate them
Mm.
and making a lot of mistakes too, right? Like I didn't have all the answers and I had nobody I could really turn to give me answers. I was kind of
Mm.
figuring it out on my own. And after I graduated from college, I started looking for college football jobs. And that led me to kind of the next chapter of my life, which was really my journey as a professional and college football coach.
Mm. So just going back to your college course, I mean, Colorado, I mean, that's a little bit away from Texas, and it's a lot higher, I guess. I mean,
Mhm.
whereabouts in Colorado was it?
So it's located in Boulder, Colorado,
And
which
that's
is a
up in the
great
mountains, isn't it?
great college town. It's in a mountain valley, right at the foot of the Flatirons mountain range in Boulder, Colorado. It's an absolutely unbelievable place. Loved my time there and met some of my closest friends there, and always had the vision that I was going to return as the head football coach. That was kind of my North Star, if you will.
Mm.
So my whole career was really geared towards being the head coach at the University of Colorado at some point in the future.
So, if you've got a massive college like that with 30 30 odd thousand students, how many football teams did they have? Because I mean, there's only a finite amount of football players you can have on one team, and I
Right.
guess an awful lot of guys that were coming through, wouldn't they? They go and play football.
Yeah, and I apologize, Tim. I don't know how it's structured in the UK, but in America, if you're competing at the college level, there's only one team. So, and this
Mhm.
is big money college sports.
Yeah.
College football is probably one of the most popular sports in America. And there's one team, and every big time university that competes at that level has one team. So
Mm.
there's not multiple teams. It's not like high school where you can field as many teams as you want. These players are being recruited sometimes from all over the nation, depending on the school, to come play very, very high level athletics. And, it's essentially a prep league for being a
For the
professional.
NFL. Yeah. Okay, I get that. So there's only what is it 93 that you're allowed on the team? Is it something like around about that number?
Well, there's different rules, and we don't have to get into the semantics, but basically,
Yeah,
you can have 85 scholarship players at one point in time.
yeah.
And I would probably say, in my experience, teams typically have anywhere from 120 to 125 players at one time.
Mm. So they got a fairly big pool to draw from, and I guess the absolute best the best get to play, and those that don't make the mark don't even get to go and sit on the bleachers. You go,
Yeah.
go and join the cheerleaders. So
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a meritocracy, right? Like,
yeah,
if I'm a coach, my job is to win, and if I don't win, I get fired, and
mm,
that's really kind of what it comes down to. So, there's no feelings typically that are involved. The best
mm,
players are going to play because you want to win, not only so that you keep your job, but in hopes of also getting other job offers and maybe
yeah.
leaving for more money or leaving for a place that you really want to go to.
It's a real dog eat dog existence, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely competitive. Uh, I mean, you are competing against the absolute best of your age group,
Mm,
and as I said, like these are players that are going to be playing in the NFL soon, the best of the best. So it's very competitive, but it's also very competitive in the coaching ranks as well.
yeah.
It's not quite the meritocracy that it is on the field. There's a lot of
Mm,
politics at play. There's a lot of who you are related to or who you played for, and that's just the
yeah.
nature of the beast. And that's what makes my story unique, is that I don't have a typical story of a football coach. I didn't play college football, and I didn't have a dad that was an NFL executive or a college coach that I could lean on his network or any family member's network. I had to build it all on my own. And I think that's kind of, again, that's where the story gets really interesting.
Okay, let's start to explore that then. So you graduated college. What was your major in, and did you do well at it?
Yeah, I mean, like, quite honestly, Tim, like, my major was business management, like I mentioned before. I don't even
Yeah.
remember what my grade point average was. It doesn't really matter, because, like, once I made this decision, it's like, okay, well, no coach is going to say, "Let me see your transcript." They don't even care if you've graduated. I
Yeah.
did, but like, it kind of, and I think this is true in life. Like like graduating from college most of the time. Now, if you are a lawyer or a doctor,
Yeah.
hopefully if you're hiring a CPA or somebody doing your taxes, you want to make sure they they probably had good grades.
They
It
gotta
probably
go
matters
for that,
then.
what they were
But I
doing,
think
yeah.
for a lot of people, like, they're not even studying what they're going to go do in life or in business or in their professional ranks. So it really doesn't matter what you did. All it matters is, were you able to complete? Were
Yeah.
you able to go through 4 years and complete the degree?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of like the way I look at it.
Okay, so let's get into it. So you've left college, and what was your first job?
Yeah, my first job was, I was an ops volunteer at SMU, Southern Methodist University, which is a Division I school here in Dallas, Texas. Was very fortunate to get a job in college football, coaching at the school. That was 5 minutes from where I grew up. Didn't happen that way for any other reason than me just kind of sending out 120 letters to every Division I school and nobody replying to me, and me picking up the phone and calling the coaches of the schools here in the Dallas, Texas
Mm.
area and saying that I was going to be home. I was still living in Colorado. I said, I'm going to be home in February. I'd love to come by and see you. And two of those coaches at other schools told me not to come by. They didn't want to see me. They didn't have job openings for me. But the coach at SMU, invited me up to his office. We sat there and talked. He said, "Hey, we're going to have a job, but it's not open yet. And I don't know when it's going to be open. And you're going to have to be here every single day. You're going to have to be working the coach's hours. You're going to be passing out Chick-fil-A's. You're going to travel with us and do bed checks. You're going to be here all the time doing football." And I think he was doing it to try and scare me away, but it really excited me. I was like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. This is exactly what I want." And he goes, "Oh, and we're not going to pay you." And I was like, "I don't care. I'm going to stay at grandma and grandpa's pool house. It's going to be fine." And was really fortunate. And he didn't give me that job. He just told me about that job. But I remember I met him. Obviously, this is probably early February. I
So
went
the
back to
season's kind of over.
Colorado. Excuse me?
So the season's over by then, isn't it? Or is it just starting for the college?
Well, I mean, the season had just ended, but they're already prepping for the next season. And so I'm reaching out to all these schools. I'm trying to find a job. And he's the only Division I coach I've ever talked to and that I know. And ended up, I just called him every 2 weeks. "Hey, Coach Hyatt, this is Evan Burk. I'm from Boulder. I came and visited you in early. Oh, yeah, I remember, Evan. You've called me every 2 weeks for the last 3 months. Oh, yeah, Coach. I just wanted to check in with you and see if you had given this volunteer job away. I'm really interested in it." And of course, he had told me no every single time, but I had been obviously talking to other schools, other coaches, and I had had a couple of job offers from other schools. And so once I had gotten those 2 job offers, the next time I called him, I said, "Hey, do you have that volunteer job open?" "No, Evan, we're focused on all this other stuff. I don't know when we're going to look at that." And I kind of said, "Hey, Coach Hyatt, like, you're the only Division I coach I know. I want to be a Division I coach. And I have these 2 job offers. One's at a high school and one is at a lower level college. And it's a volunteer job." And he goes, well, if you want to be a college coach, you need to be in college. So if you're asking me for my advice, I'd say take the college job. So I was like, Coach, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you so much. I'm sorry it didn't work out, but I will certainly reach out to you after the season and whatever. And he goes, hey, wait, when are you coming back to Dallas? Oh, I'll be there in like 3 weeks. I'm coming back for my sister's something. Oh, okay, great. Why don't you come by and see me when you come back in town? So said, okay, sure. And by the way, I'm 22 years old. I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea what's happening. And I accept the job at the lower level school in Colorado. I go back 3 weeks later. I go back to Dallas. I go see Coach Hyatt. And as soon as I walk in the door, he walks me into the head coach's office. They tell me, hey, what goes on here stays here. Okay. Like, you don't tell anybody about what you see here. You're expected to work hard, work every day, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, okay, go see Coach Hyatt. And I walk out the door and like, nobody's even telling me anything, right? They're just speaking to me in all these like, vague statements. And Coach Hyatt's like he's handing me like the schedule, and he's like, okay, Evan, like, we need you back here on June 15th. That's going to be our Mustang camp. And I'm like, whoa, Coach, like, what's happening? What are you talking about? He goes, what do you mean? What are we talking? Like, we're hiring you for the position you won't leave me alone about. We're hiring you. And, again, I'm 22. I have no idea what's happening.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is exactly what I wanted. Yes. But I had already accepted that other job and ended up obviously resigning that job. That coach at that school, that lower level school, was amazing. He was very cool about it. I was very worried he was going to yell, scream, be upset. And he understood, so that was really neat. And that started a 4-year journey as like I said, ops intern, passing out Chick-fil-A's, making copies, all of the glamorous things that you imagine when you want to be a college football coach for your career. And I got to do all those things at SMU and was fortunate also that I got to progress every single year in my career. So I was working in ops one year. I was working in video and recruiting the next year. I was working on offense the next year. I was working on defense. And so by the end of my time at SMU, after 4 years, not only had I gotten my master's degree, but I had also had the opportunity to work in every facet of an NFL, at a high level college organization.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm soaking it all up. I'm taking notes because I'm preparing for my opportunity in 10 years to be the head coach at the University of Colorado. And so it was a tremendous experience, both professionally to get all those experiences and to learn so much from so many great coaches, and also personally being close to home and being in a situation where I wasn't completely by myself exploring a new profession that quite honestly was extremely challenging. I had family very close by, close to me, that I was able to kind of lean on for some emotional support. And
cheap
it's
digs,
nice to have them around.
And cheap digs.
Yes.
So we just stopping with your parents.
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, you brought it up and I kind of alluded to it. So I stayed at my grandparents' pool house for 4 years and was very fortunate that they had that pool house and that I was able to kind of have that opportunity because I wasn't making any money to start with. I was making nothing. And then I think when I became a grad assistant, I was making something like $700 a month. So my standard of living would have been very poor had I not been from Dallas. So in a lot of respects, I was very lucky and fortunate to kind of, I was fortunate enough to get that opportunity at a big time school and everything that came from that, the learning experiences, the network, the everything that came from that was very fortunate. And then I guess in another sense, just as fortunate to be literally 5 minutes from where I grew up. The familiarity of being here in Dallas, Texas, in a big city. And as you mentioned, and as I'm kind of telling you, to have that support system where, like I didn't have to pay rent for 4 years, which I wasn't making any money. So that was extremely helpful at the time.
Yeah. So how did the team do? over that
The
4 years?
team,
I mean,
so
where
for
did they
any,
sit in the table?
yeah, and if your audience is mainly UK audience, you may not be familiar, but
Oh, no, no,
SMU.
no. I've got a well-wide audience.
Well, so for those that aren't familiar, the SMU football team in the
Yeah.
early 1980s was one of the best football teams in college football. There was a span, I think, from 1980 to 1984. SMU, this small private school in Dallas, Texas, won more football games than any school in the nation.
Wow.
And it came out shortly thereafter that this amazing period of success for the SMU football team was attributed a lot to a payment scandal that they were paying players, which at the time was illegal in the NCAA. And they didn't get caught for it once; they got caught for it multiple times. It was a huge scandal in terms of college football, and they were handed the death penalty. And they're one of the
Mm,
only schools in all of NCAA history in collegiate sports to be handed down this death penalty. And it essentially suspends the program. You lose all of your scholarships and you can't play in the
mm,
postseason for a certain number of years. And so
mm,
SMU was never able to rebound from that. I think they
mm,
started playing again in 1986 or 1987. And it was just a string of 25, 30 losing seasons in a row. So the year I showed up, 2006, the team was pretty good, kind of good.
mm,
And that team went 6-6. So they didn't quite get over the hump of having a winning season. But
mm.
we also didn't get a postseason bid, which they hadn't had since that death penalty.
Yeah.
And the next year we were 1-11. That whole coaching staff got fired. And I was fortunate where they had told, coaches, they're obviously on big contracts. They're told, okay, at the, after the season, you have 3 days to clear out your desk and you need to be out
Yeah.
of here by Tuesday, November 30th or whatever. Well, I wasn't one of those full-time coaches. I'm a young coach. I'm a grad assistant. And everybody had to leave the office except for the secretary, the operations director, and myself.
Mm,
And so for about 6 weeks before they hired their next coach, there was nobody in the office. It was just me and a couple other people. So we were handling a lot of different things. And then nobody told me to go home. And they kept putting checks in my account. So I didn't say anything. I didn't ask about like, am I supposed to leave too? Everybody I know in college football just got fired. Am I supposed to go? Nobody said anything to me. I kept showing up, kept getting checks in my account. The next coaching staff shows up, and I just kind of operated as if like, oh, I'm just part of this new
part
house you got. Like, don't worry about me. I'm just here. I'm just
part
here
of
in
the
the
furniture.
background. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, I was doing a lot of things too to kind of try and make myself valuable, try and make myself useful to those new coaches that were showing up, and ended up not only being retained but being promoted into an on the field coaching role in
Yeah.
2008. Unfortunately, that first year, that new coaching staff, we were 1-11 again. So you asked how we did. We were probably the worst team in America in Division I
Mm,
college football in 2007 and the 2008 season. I mean, we were very
mm,
bad.
yeah.
And but what was cool about my experience was that second coaching staff that had come in. Those were coaches that had had success before, a lot of NFL experience on that coaching
Yeah.
staff. And they were able to start building a culture, a winning culture with the SMU Mustang football team. That even though we went 1-11 in 2008, we had kind of started to understand what it took to win.
Yeah.
And anytime you're trying to turn around a losing situation, whether you're in a business that's been losing for an extended period of time or a sports team, like you can't just walk in the room and say, "Hey guys, we need to win on the road. You
Yeah.
guys need to do the things you're supposed to do to win." Like they don't know how to win.
Yeah.
They don't know how to win. There is no road mentality on this team because we haven't won a road game in 5 years. You need to
Oh,
teach that from the ground up and literally from the ground up. So we were trying to do things in that first year, even though we weren't successful on the field. We were playing very close games. We were very
mm,
competitive. We had to learn how to practice. We had
yeah.
to learn what were the type of habits, what are the winning habits. habits, right? Like, I think a lot of times in coaching, and I've seen this in my career, it's like, guys, we need to do this. Like, we need to do, and then coaches like insert some type of result or some type of outcome. Like, we need to be the toughest team on the field. And I don't think a lot of coaches actually reverse engineer that. Like, that doesn't mean anything. It sounds great in a soundbite for,
Yeah.
a podcast or a show or a
A,
documentary, but it
a
doesn't
good
mean
speech, but it's got no meat to it.
it means absolutely
Yeah.
nothing. It's really just hollow words. And so, like, what I was able to see firsthand was a coaching staff that knew what they were doing, that knew how to build a winning culture, and didn't just stand in front of the team and say, "Hey guys, we're going to have a winning culture here." They stood in front of the team and were saying, "Hey guys, like, you don't know how to win, but we do know how to win. And if you do what we tell you to do, those that stay are going to win." And so
Yeah.
they started this process of just teaching. Like, it sounds crazy, but just teaching. And again, we're talking about 18, 22-year-old
Yeah.
athletes, like teaching them how to sit in a meeting room, teaching them how to
Yeah.
take notes. Like, we broke it down that simply. We had what we called high performance habits. And strangely enough, not strangely enough, I mean, it makes sense. These are the habits that I teach in my own executive coaching. And when I speak to companies and when I speak at conferences, these are the same things that I talk about, the same things that we taught that SMU football team in 2008. Leading into that 2009 season, again, my fourth year at SMU, but the second year of that coaching staff, everything had flipped, right? Like, all those close games that we had lost the year before, what we didn't see is that, like, we were slowly building these habits, these winning habits. And in 2009, everything started to click. All those close games we lost in 2008 turned into wins in 2009. And so that team was a really special team because it was the first team since the death penalty in
Yeah.
SMU's football history that had not only had a winning season, but also went to a bowl game. And we had a huge win in the Hawaii Bowl that year. We won like 45-10 over Nevada. And just a really special experience. And particularly for me, having been there 4 years, having had the chance to get my
Yeah.
graduate degree, to be close to home, and then to kind of have it all culminate in the Hawaii Bowl was something really special.
So that gave you the result at the end of the season then. So why did you leave after 4 years if you had a successful season?
Well, this is the life of a coach. This is the way coaching works. You're typically not anywhere for more than 2 or 3 seasons. If you are, that's pretty abnormal, to be honest with you. And the reason why I left, quite honestly, is I went into the head coach's office in December of 2009 and I said, "Hey coach, I'm about to finish my grad degree and I can string it out till next season. And if I do that, like, I can stay here another year." And he said, "Oh, I've already hired your replacement." So it was
Oh,
pretty simple.
thanks for
So
telling us.
yeah, thanks for telling me. So I kind of took that, and I'll be honest with you, I was pretty down. I was pretty discouraged for about 24 hours. And different adversity and failures that we have in life warrant longer times of grief, times of being upset, or maybe like just sulking on the couch with a pizza and ice cream, however
Yeah.
you cope with that. But I have a general rule, it not being, a devastating personal emergency or family emergency, that it's okay to feel bad. But after 24 hours, like,
Yeah.
you got to get up and go. So I didn't really give myself any time. I gave myself about, maybe I say 24 hours. I probably gave myself about 16 hours to feel bad about myself. And I remember, because like that happened in one afternoon. And I remember the next evening, I had already come up with a plan of like, okay, I'm going to go to the NFL, and I don't know anybody in the NFL. So how am I going to do that? Okay, this is going to be my plan to go to the NFL. And essentially my plan was, I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any connections. I didn't play in the NFL. So I was going to find, wherever I could, connections to people that I did know that had connections in the NFL, and I was going to write them a handwritten letter. So I made a spreadsheet, and it basically kind of outlined everything from every coach I had coached with and where they had coached from 1970 to 2009. And then after I had made that, I had made on that same spreadsheet, I had made a timeline for every employee that I could find in the NFL. So every team, I probably did this for 30 or 40 people, right? Like listing out where they had coached from 1970 to 2009. And I basically just started to cross-reference. So if I saw a coach that I knew that I worked with that coached with another coach, let's just say for the Dallas Cowboys, I wrote that coach a letter. Hey, Coach Smith says great things about you. I'm going to be at the Senior Bowl. I'd love to meet you. I'd love to get your advice on getting a job in the NFL. And that ended up being 450 handwritten letters that I wrote to every employee that I had a connection to in the NFL. And
that must have cost you an absolute fortune in stamps.
That is an astute observation, Tim. Here is the catch. I was working for a huge university. So I could write all my handwritten letters on their letterhead. I could grab the envelopes out of the mailroom. Actually, at this point in time of my journey, I was actually coaching, or I was actually officing out of the mailroom at the football office. And so I just grabbed the envelopes, and guess what? There's just a huge bin right next to the door that you just throw your letters in. And it just gets taken care of. You don't have to pay for it, right? Well, somebody's paying for it. I don't know who's paying for it, but I didn't pay for it. And so I wrote all those letters. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Payment in kind for those early years there. That's what it was, payment in kind.
So I did that because I felt a handwritten letter would be more likely to be responded to than just a typed letter. And, it's amazing when you have like a strong vision of what you want to accomplish that you can go through a lot of, obviously a lot of risk take, but also the rejection, right? Like I'm writing 450 letters, Tim. I think I got 12 responses, and I would count a response as anything that was like a personal, whether it was an email, I got some phone calls, I got some people reaching out and like asking me to apply or interview for jobs. Anything that was personal, I considered an actual response. I didn't consider a, form letter thanking me for my letter as a response. So I got 12 of those responses. Of those 12, 3 ended up leading to interviews. And one of those interviews ended up landing me a job with the Miami Dolphins. And, when I reached out to you initially, I kind of told you that I had an extraordinary story. And I kind of think my journey from 4th grade football to the NFL is a little extraordinary, just from the sense that I'm not a typical football coach, and I didn't play. And I didn't have any type of professional network in the professional ranks. And yet I was still able to access these people and get into the room, as they say.
So come on, Miami Dolphins. Who was the coach at the time?
Tony Sperano was the coach at the time.
And who was your star quarterback?
He was the quarterback at the time was Chad Pennington and Chad Henne.
So, what job did you get? Was you just the water boy, or did you actually get a role as a coach?
Close, very close, Tim. I started as a video intern, and my attitude was to do exactly what I did at the NFL, or did at SMU in the NFL. I was going to get in. I was going to start however I could, and I was just going to gradually build on one success and have that lead into the next one and gradually build. It was a little more difficult because the NFL, it's a very, very, I don't want to say secretive. I mean, I was in a Bill Parcells organization, so it was like nobody knew who I was. They weren't very open to me helping in any sense. And it was just kind of, it was a little challenging coming in, not having any
Yeah.
connection, me being a quote unquote video guy, but trying to explain how I was really trying to be a coach and I can help them with things. They didn't really know what to
Mm.
do with me. But first week of the preseason, and I've been bugging these coaches the whole, 6 months leading up to the
Mm.
preseason. Can I help you with this? Can I do anything? And then the special teams coordinator gave me an assignment. Hey, yeah, you want to help me? Watch all of Tampa Bay's punt rushes from last year and draw them up. Yes, sir. So I didn't take that as like, hey, give them to me in a week.
Mm.
I stayed there till 11:30 that night. From probably like 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 11:30 at night, I watched all whatever it was, 150,
Mm.
160 plays from the previous season, drew them all up on a computer. And it was almost like all of the things that I had done at SMU had kind of like led to this moment, right? Like when I started at SMU, I
Yeah.
didn't know how to use Playmaker Pro, which was the software
Yeah.
program that you use to kind of drop football plays. I didn't know how to discern a certain type of stunt or a certain
Mm.
type of movement on film. I learned all of that at SMU over my 4 years there. I didn't know how to kind of put together a report for coaches
Yeah.
that makes it easy for them to read, that they can review in literally seconds. I learned all that at SMU. So it kind of
Mm.
led to this one singular moment where I'd been bugging these coaches for anything I could do to help them during this time that they were just kind of like ignoring me. And like
Mm.
this first assignment, as I said, I stayed there for whatever, 10, 12 hours working on it. And then I walked upstairs and the special teams coordinator was still there with his assistant, just to give you the audience an idea. That's
Mm.
the hours that coaches work. And I walked in the door and I said, "Hey coach, I just wanted to give this to you." He goes, "What is this?" Oh, coach, those are the punt rushes you asked for earlier today. You already went through all this. This is them. Sat there, flipped through it, took maybe about 10 seconds. He goes, "Okay, this is great. Here's what we can get working on tomorrow." And so he made a little list on his board, on his whiteboard.
Mm.
Hey, here's what we're going to get working on. And so I was really fortunate because that one opportunity led to working with those guys behind the scenes. And the nature of the professional football and any competitive industry is that you're not really afforded a lot of opportunities to make mistakes, or sometimes it may not even be your mistake. It can be a
Yeah.
player's mistake, but you take the blame for it. And unfortunately, that coach was let go 8 weeks into that season. But what
Mm.
that did was they elevated that assistant. And when that happened, uh, even though nobody knew that I was kind of working behind the scenes with these guys, uh, when it came time to kind of fill that assistance role that had just been promoted, they promoted me into that role. So I was really lucky in terms of my
Mm.
opportunity there. And but I think obviously I tell this story a lot when I'm speaking or in any work that I'm doing with individuals or high level teams. Uh, you know, taking advantage of every opportunity and being resilient and persistent.
Grab
Um,
it with both
and,
hands.
and you just don't know where your opportunity is going to come from
Mm.
and where it's going to show itself.
So bring us a little bit more up to date. Where are you now? How many teams have you coached for? How many jobs have you had in the NFL?
Yeah, so I worked that job with Miami Dolphins, and then from there I went to McMurray University, which is a lower level college here in Texas, and then I worked at UCLA. After a couple of years at UCLA, I decided I didn't want to coach anymore. I didn't
Mm.
want to do the 30 years in front of me of moving every 2 to 3 years. And quite honestly, I mentioned earlier how my North Star was being the head coach at the University of Colorado, and that
Yeah.
no longer was my North Star. It no longer drove me.
Mm.
And that's kind of how I knew it had always driven me. It had always gotten me through any type of adversity or low
Yeah.
moments I'd ever had. And it stopped doing that at the end of the 2015 season. So after that season, I left coaching. And as I've been kind of alluding to, now I work as a speaker. and as a coach, and I work primarily with performance-driven teams and individuals and leaders. So anybody that works in a highly competitive environment, typically speaking, whether it's keynotes or workshops, and I
Yeah.
also design and deliver development programs, based on building out specific skills
Yeah.
pursuant to high performance. So anything from just the high performance habits I mentioned earlier
Yeah.
to mindset. And that's what I really love to do now, is kind of use the same strategies and practices and habits from my coaching career, and use those with the clients and the teams and the corporate organizations that I work with now. And I also just finished, I just published my first book called Finding Intangibles. And
Yeah.
it's a lot about my coaching experience and how winning teams are built. Specifically, what are the character traits that drive all elite performers and championship teams?
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, that's called Finding Intangibles, and it's available on Amazon right now.
Did you ever get a team to the Super Bowl?
No,
in a word.
no.
So what was your highest position or that you did on the team?
So
Did you make a
the
head
highest level
coach?
that I had was special teams coordinator, recruiting coordinator, and wide receivers coach.
Brilliant. So was it just the Miami Dolphins, that the NFL, that you played with or was coached with, or did you go to any other NFL teams, or did you just go back down to college teams?
Yeah, the Miami Dolphins was my NFL experience, and then I primarily was involved in college for my career, and since then, have worked with several pro organizations and college programs. And I don't know if the audience is familiar with professional esports, but I was also involved in professional esports. So worked with one of their professional teams in the Overwatch League, and have done some work with UCLA and a number of other college programs as well.
So that brings us right up to date.
That's right up to date. Yeah. So, like I
Brilliant.
mentioned, my book is kind of the thing that I'm focused on now, and speaking on my book. And
Yeah.
I also have a podcast, the Highest Level Podcast, which kind of examines the intersection of leadership and sports.
Yeah.
And so, typically interviewing athletes and coaches and team executives on what makes championship teams and what leadership excellence looks like at the highest levels.
Yeah. So where can people get your book?
Yeah, the book is Finding Intangibles, and they can find it on Amazon. And if they're looking for me, the best place to connect with me is on Twitter at Coach Evan Burk. Burk is spelled B-U-R-K, just FYI. And they can also find it on my website, www.coachevanburk.com. And those are the two best places to find me, and Amazon is the best place to find my book.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Evan. I really enjoyed that. That's been a real insightful chat we've just had.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Tim. We got into some nitty gritty details that I typically gloss over when I'm telling the story. I kind of, try and give the 10,000 foot view, but this was fun kind of digging into some of those finer points of my journey. And like I said, thank you so much for having me.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.